In this video, I'm going to show you how to properly remove blue and green hair dye by browning it out for a natural end result. And if you don't know what browning out hair color is, stick around because I'm going to share all of the details. And if you're new here, my name is Mirella Manelli. I'm a hair educator who helps hairstylists simplify their skills and business. So let's get right into this video. To properly do our test, I'm going to be using some level 10 hair swatches. Now, these are the perfect swatches for you to use, especially when you're trying this out for the first time, so you can properly see exactly what it's going to do, and then you can translate this to your client as well. So for our blue, I'm going to be using Danger Jones Vertigo, and this is the perfect blue shade to test to brown it out and get that natural shade. For my next combination, I couldn't quite find a dark green that I had on hand, so I just decided to mix up a little bit of the Danger Jones Solitude and added in the lime green Guardian. So I'm going to be using 3 swatches for each of the shades because one of them is going to be my before color of what we started with, and then the secondary swatch is going to be our browning out swatch, which I'm going to show you today. And then just for fun today, we're going to be using the Malibu DDL on that third swatch, so that way you can see exactly what would happen if we just slapped on some lightener, or a DDL in this case. And because we're working with Vivids, you can't forget your gloves. So what is browning out hair color? Browning out hair color is using the complementary shade to neutralize the opposing shade. So in this case, since we're using blue and green dye, we're going to be using the opposite shade of that using a demi-permanent hair color. The best way to determine this is by taking out your color wheel. Now on your color wheel, you're going to notice that the opposite shade of blue is going to be copper, and the opposite shade of green is going to be red. However, not all blues and greens are created equal. You're going to have different variations. So this is why it's really important to make sure that you're neutralizing the proper level and tone according to the type of blue and green you're using. That's exactly what we're going to do today, is test out the 2 different variations of blue and greens according to the type of lightness and deposit that we achieved today, and we're going to neutralize that. So just keep in mind that no matter what type of green and blue you are neutralizing, it's going to vary a little bit on the type of formula in demi-permanent that you're going to neutralize with. Now, the reason why I'm going to be using demi-permanent to neutralize is because more than likely, if you used a direct dye, you probably also used lightener. Now, demi-permanent is not damaging to the hair. There's no ammonia in it typically, so this is going to be the safest type of formula for you to use on top of a vivid shade. Not to mention that the direct dye that you're using is just that, a direct dye. It's non-oxidative, so you can just squeeze it right out of the tube and then paint it onto your hair and it's going to stain it. But the demi-permanent is an oxidative dye, meaning you're going to have to mix some type of developer to oxidate it. Now, the cool part about this is when you do lift on top of a browned out shade, you have all of those direct dyes and indirect dyes mixing together, that it lifts to a much more natural shade, which is going to give you a lot more control when you get ready to do your final toner color. Browning out is the perfect technique for anybody who truly wants to eliminate all of the blue and green hair dye and just have a natural end result. So if your client is really wanting to still be blue or green, this is not the technique for you. So now that you understand somewhat of the concept of browning out, I'm going to go ahead and color my swatches so you know exactly what we're going to be doing for today's project. Now, if any of this still sounds confusing to you, be sure to jot down all of your questions down below at any time in this video and I'll be sure to respond. So now it's been 20 minutes and we went ahead and washed these and we are ready to figure out how light these are according to the level finder. That's the first thing that you're going to want to do. So we're going to take our level finder here and you can see it says levels 10 through 2. And I'm just going to go ahead and match these up. Now, if you have a little hard time figuring out the exact level of this, what you can do is use your phone and turn it to black and white, and it will give you the better idea of like what the level is versus the tone. Because it's really sometimes kind of hard to differentiate between looking at unnatural colors against a natural shade. So doing the black and white trick on your phone is kind of like the coolest little hack possible. but I'm gonna say that these are level 8. Now that we know exactly what level we're trying to neutralize at, the next step is trying to determine the type of tone we need to neutralize at. So the best thing to do is use this color wheel and match up your green shade to the best green. And I feel like it's living like right around this zone. I think this matches the green perfectly right there. And then we're gonna do the same thing for our blue shade. Now this is the true blue right here, but I kind of don't feel like it's living there. It's kind of living in between both of these blue and blue-green shades. So I'm gonna place that one right here. Now from here is we're gonna find that complementary color. So I know that this type of shade of blue, which makes sense because we mixed a blue and a green together. So this totally just goes with what we mixed up. So we know we need to live around here of that red copper and true copper formula. So primary shade of copper with maybe 25% of our red shade. And then we have this green shade here. We're gonna go straight across. We know we need to mix up a true red. So now that we know exactly what level and what tone we're looking for, I decided I was gonna go ahead and use Moroccan oil because that's kind of what I have handy right now in the salon as far as color choices. Now the Moroccan oil Demi Permanent, in full transparency, it is a little bit transparent. It's kind of a sheer type of deposit. So if you are using a demi-permanent shade that is a little bit more on the sheer side, you're gonna wanna go down a level so that we can make sure you have enough saturation of deposit of those neutralization pigments that we're really looking for. Now, if you're using something like Redken Shades EQ or Kenra Demi-Permanent, using at the level of the level 8 that we were looking for is going to be sufficient enough. Now for the blue shade, I went in with 7CR. That's the lightest shade that they had in a copper red. So it's primary copper with a little bit of red, and it's going to give me enough pigment so that way I can brown out this blue shade that we're trying to achieve. Now for the green shade, I decided to mix up 8R with a little bit of 6R. Now 8R is like the sheerest type of red in Demi-Permanent that you'll ever use, which is exactly why I added in a little bit of the 6R. I decided to mix the two shades so we can have a nice, pretty balanced level 7. Now, if you're probably wondering what would actually happen if I just threw Lightener on top of these blue and green shades, I went ahead for fun and mixed up the DDL XL in Malibu C Pro. Now, what this does is gently remove any direct dyes specifically, usually giving you a nice clean canvas so you can put more direct dyes right on top. Now, the DDL does give you the option to use just water, which makes it a really great gentle option, or you have the option to mix it up with 10 or 20 vol. Now for this example, I just decided to mix it up with just water, and as a matter of fact, on the label it does say for best results on blue and green hair to mix it up with water, so that's exactly what we did. So what I have here are my control pieces, and then I have my blue partnered up with my copper red, and then my green partnered up with my red shade. And then right in the center, we have the Malibu C Pro DDL XL. So I'm just gonna go ahead and apply my color just like we did when we were putting on the direct dyes. We're just gonna thoroughly saturate. Now, the Demi-Permanent is really easy typically to saturate just because it is a liquid. You can already start to see it's starting to neutralize that blue. Now I'm gonna go ahead and do the green swatch with my red. You can almost see instantly how much this is starting to brown out here. Now the DDL XL, you can process up to 45 minutes, but we're just gonna kind of watch it and see how much lift we can get in the 20 minutes in comparison to our browned out shades. So I'm just gonna go ahead and apply this DDL right on top. You can see this is like really kind of like a thick paste. I honestly can kind of like smell how strong this DDL is. Now, anytime you're using any type of like direct dye lifter, just know that it is a form of bleach lightener. So you do really need to be careful with how you're mixing it. I'm starting to see a little bit of pigment shift, but nothing super crazy. And now we wait. Now we're just gonna let 20 minutes pass by and then I'm gonna show you the results. It's been about 20 minutes and I went ahead and rinsed out the swatches, and you can see the huge impact that the blue swatch had. This is a true brown out. It looks really muddy. This is exactly what we want to see. We don't want to see really any remnants of that blue shade. So this is like the perfect example of what a brown out looks like. So when I go ahead and put lightener on top of this, what we're really aiming for again is that natural shade that's going to be really easy to tone. Now on the flip side, my green swatch really just loved this red shade. It just completely embraced it and kind of almost took over. The benefit of this though is that even though that green shade is still kind of living underneath all of that, and the red is living on top, it's probably going to also give us a natural shade as well. But we'll see like when we do our final test. Now, as far as the DDL swatches are concerned, they're not quite moving as much as I'd like them to. I was gonna process them for just 20 minutes, but since they've barely made any type of shift, now I know I did mix them up with water, and to be expected, it's not gonna be a huge impact. I'm just gonna go ahead and let them sit on for another 20 minutes with a total time of 40 minutes of processing time and see if we can really kind of shift more of this pigment out. So for our next step, I'm gonna be using the Kenra Beyond Bond Lightener. So anytime you're putting a lightener on top of already previously lightened hair, because keep in mind, vivid hair still has bleach underneath it. So even though we got that vivid shade and then we put the demi-permanent shade, there's still lightener living underneath. So it's super important that you treat it like it's compromised hair. Now, if the hair is completely trashed, then there's no lightener in the world that's gonna actually like fix or repair any of that. And we're gonna put this right on top of our browned out swatches and then just kind of watch it and see if we're gonna be able to lift to that natural shade. Now, I feel a little bad because initially, like when I was doing these test strands, I wanted to have a control swatch for each, and I should have made an extra browned out swatch for you. So I'm gonna attempt to just dye half of this with the lightener, okay? So that way we can see the best example of it being lifted versus the browned out section. So wish me luck. Okay, so I'm actually gonna just sandwich this so that way it can not dry out. Now, lightener does have a tendency to dry out, so that's the real reason why we do cover it. It's not so much for the heat conducting because that only happens when it's living right next to your head. Now let's go ahead and do the red swatch. Now I'm going to start my 20-minute timer, take a little peek at it, and then see exactly what the finished results are. It's been 20 minutes. So this is the blue dye. We got a lot of pink pigment going on. Let's go ahead and wipe this off. Not too bad, not too bad. I do see a lot of pink pigment though, which is not like the best scenario. We don't really want to be neutralizing pink, but it's kind of interesting to see how browned out this got. Now we can see our DDL situation going, not doing a damn thing, but let's go ahead and wipe this clean and just kind of see for funsies. Yeah, nothing exciting. We got like a little bit of like this lighter muddy looking blue-green. And now for the green swatch. So this one looks a lot more of a natural shade. It's just straight up red and it looks a lot more natural. So let's go ahead and wipe this clean and just kind of see. Again, kind of getting like a little bit of like peachy tones with this one. So I think we just need to like let this kind of like bake a little longer and let it do its thing. And here are the final results. The blue one definitely surprised me. We got this really muddy shade to start off with, and then we had a lot of pink pigment that pulled through, but we just kind of trusted the process and we got a pretty neutral shade for the most part to then go in with the final toner formula of your choice. So whether you want to do like an N shade or maybe an ash shade, I think this would come out really beautiful and come out to be like a very creamy blonde if you wanted. Whereas with the DDL, we got a really pale, kind of a muddy blue shade to work with, which would make it really difficult to tone as to be expected. So overall, the results that we achieved with this blue swatch didn't surprise me whatsoever. So if this is something you'd want to try, definitely play around with the different types of demis you can use with the corresponding blue shade you're using, and you'll be quite surprised at how well you can correct what exactly you're working with. Now, when it comes to the green shade, this also kind of surprised me. So we have the control swatch, we see how green this is, but when it comes down to using the browning out technique, this really did a great job of neutralizing, but it kind of captured a lot of those red pigments. So I kind of thought that maybe this was going to come out a little still kind of red, but again, this really surprised me. It came out to be a very warm end result that again can be really easy to neutralize. But then when I look at the DDL, we did process it for 40 minutes with the DDL. It kind of almost looks similar in the lifting phase if you kind of compare the two. When it comes to the neutralization though, the browning out method is a little less of that warmer shade to have to control. So still in comparison with these two, I still would go with the browning out method for both removing green and blue for a final natural end result. Now, if this is a method that you would love to try out as a color correction specialist, please let me know down below. And if you have any questions about this process or maybe some suggestions on some formulations that you would have done differently, please let me know down below. And for all the ways on how you can work with me, be sure to head on over to MirellaManelli.com. Finally, make sure to like, share this video with a friend, and I will see you on the next one.